Hi everyone, on this week's episode I got myself a special guest.
Hi everyone.
It's Nicole. So as you guys know, we had our kids quite young. I was 18.
No, I was 19.
And coming up in June this year, our eldest Jake will be 25.
And our youngest Courtney is almost 24.
Now to be honest, we thought we'd have grandkids by now, but we don't, and that's okay. Now we have been thinking about making this project for a while, and since Jake's turning 25 this year, we thought it might be a good time to make it. Now we don't want to put any pressure on the kids, but the chair that we make this week, we want to hand down to our first grandchild.
And then they could give it to their first grandchild.
Now as you can probably already tell by the thumbnail, this week we're using coloured pencils. We have 350 of them. We bought out the whole shop. Now before we go cracking open any pencils, the first thing we need to do is make ourselves a mould so we can pour some resin.
So to prevent our resin from sticking to our melamine, I'm going to cover it in packing tape.
Now to give ourselves some insurance against leaks, I'm going to seal the inside here with some UV resin. So now that our mould's all sealed, it's time to get the resin ready. And because we only need a thin base layer, we're going to use art cast. So now that we've poured this base layer, we're going to leave it to cure. Now we're not going to let it fully cure because when we put the pencils in, we want them to stick a little bit. Well, as you can see, our first layer is starting to cure. So what I'm going to do now is mix up some more resin, pour it in, and then start adding the pencils. So Nicole and I have been thinking about this, and we're a bit worried that air is going to leave this pencil and give us some problems. Now there is one thing we can try to combat this, and that is to put these pencils inside a cup of resin and then put it in the vacuum chamber. We'll create a vacuum which will draw all the air out and replace it with resin. So now that all our pencils are down, it's time to put on our top layer. Now we did have a couple of casualties. We lost about 50 pencils due to our resin going off, but that's okay. Between them and the dark colours that we didn't use, we still have about 250 pencils in here. So now that we've poured the final layer, we can leave it to cure. Now don't worry about this strip in the middle, because I'll explain a bit more about that later. Now we do plan on unveiling this to the kids on Mother's Day, which is May 14th, and I think today is April 16th, so that gives us 4 weeks to get this finished.
It's now the next day, and our resin's nice and hard, so it's ready to take out of the mould.
Well, I think that looks really good. It's a really nice casting. Now we did have a few little air bubbles, but that's okay, we can sort them out later. Now the next thing I need to do is take this to the disc sander and round off these sharp edges. So now that the corners are all rounded, the next thing we're going to do is give it a sand and a polish, and then we can get onto this middle part. So now that we've finished sanding and polishing these faces, the next step is to bend this resin. Now bending resin isn't anything new to me, because you might remember 5 years ago when I bent some resin to make this lamp. Now on this piece we only need to bend it 90 degrees, but I think it's going to be a lot harder because it's so thick. So the technique we're going to use to bend this resin is I'm going to take my heat gun and heat the resin from the top, and then Nicole's going to take her heat gun and heat it from the bottom, and then hopefully the resin will get soft enough that it'll start to bend around our mould. Well, it looks like we're getting there. Look at that. It's bending quite nicely. Well, the camera wasn't filming, but we've just cracked it. I just put a bit too much pressure on it and it started to split. And that's what we've got. So it's now been a few days since we did this, and to be honest, we're pretty gutted. We were hoping to have a bent resin chair, but unfortunately I just put too much weight on it and it caused it to split. So we've been having to think of how we can fix this. Now the easiest way would just be to keep this as the base and have this one as the back and build a wooden frame for it, but I really like the idea of this looking like one piece. So what I'm going to do is take these to the table saw. I'm going to make 2 cuts along here and here, that way we can join these back together using some dowels. Now the epoxy that we're going to use to glue it back together holds 150 kilos. Now if for some reason it isn't strong enough, this chair will just stay a display chair and we'll have to make another one.
Before we glue these together, we're going to sand and polish these edges.
Now that we've finished sanding, it's time to glue it together. And the first thing I need to do is glue in my little dowels, which I made out of little pencils. While I'm waiting for this glue to dry, I'm going to start making the legs. Well, that's one down, 3 more to go.
So now that Ben's finished turning the legs, we can paint them.
While those legs are outside drying, I went ahead and cut and shaped my rails. And now that they're finished, I can go ahead and paint them blue. Now while I'm waiting for those rails to dry, I can finish up these legs. Well, that's one leg completely finished. Just 3 to go. Now that all our pieces are dry, we can start gluing this frame together. Now that the frame's all glued together, we just need to leave it for a few days before we attach it to the seat. So it's now time to pull the clamps off. Now the manufacturer did say that the glue would reach its full strength after 3 days, but just to be safe, we've left it for a week. Well, I think that's looking really good. Now before we go putting this on the frame, I just want to give it a bit of a clean up. It has been sitting around the workshop and it's gotten a bit dusty. It's now time for a test fit before we glue it into place. Oh wow!
That looks so good.
Wow, that frame just looks perfect. It just ties it all in together. Well, as you guys know, it's already July and we missed our May deadline. We had a few setbacks along the way, but we got there in the end.
So let's check it out.
So Nicole and I have decided that this chair will stay as a display piece, and when we do eventually have grandkids, we'll make another one, but this time we'll do it the way we envisioned, by bending the resin. And also, since we started filming this episode, Just Resin have now released River Pour, which will make this project so much easier. Well, that's it for this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.